NGO Monitor claims that the Shalit Agreement shows the moral failure of international human rights frameworks. Joining me now to discuss that charge is Professor Gerald Steinberg, president of NGO Monitor. Professor Steinberg, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
You've directed some very harsh criticism toward organizations like the UN Human Rights Council, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, the Red Cross. What are they guilty of?
My office, the NGO Monitor office, sits right opposite the tent that Noam and Aviva Shalit sat in for years. We saw every day, and we saw them and their situation. We saw Gilad Shalit's face. We never once saw a sustained vigil. Occasionally there would be an amnesty group that would get photographed there. Once or twice a year they might issue a statement, but seldom, maybe 2 or 3 times more than that. But there was no sustained effort. They mount campaigns on everything, these organizations. They were fundamental in giving all of the material, the false claims, the war crimes allegations against Israeli soldiers that went in to look for Gilad Shalit. Those they know how to do campaigns on. Where were they on Gilad Shalit? They were absolutely nowhere. And they've left the families of the terrorist victims. They should have been in the Supreme Court today. They should have argued that letting these mass murderers out is fundamentally immoral. They weren't there at all. They have completely left the moral battlefield.
Might these organizations argue from the other side that 1,027 Palestinian prisoners are going to be released, Gilad Shalit's coming home, all the wrongs have now been righted?
That's more or less what an organization called Gisha said. They also call themselves a human rights organizations, and they claim to support freedom of movement from Gaza. Well, Gilad Shalit certainly didn't have any freedom of movement. This moral equivalence, or what we call immoral equivalence, an Israeli soldier defending his country in Israel was kidnapped. His colleagues were killed in a raid that went through a tunnel 5.5 years ago. And that's somehow equivalent to these terrorists, like the one who took the terrorist into Tamimi, who took the suicide bomber into the Sparrow Pizza establishment in 2001 and killed 16 completely innocent people. And she boasts about it. And this is somehow, and there are over 1,000 terrorists in this group, somehow this is supposed to be equivalent in Gisha's warped moral framework to the release, of the very belated release of Gilad Shalit. It is absolutely immoral, this approach.
Can anything be done to get the attention of these human rights organizations and make them understand the error of their ways, so to speak, so it's not repeated again?
In every organization there are individuals. Some of these individuals hopefully will have their ears opened and their eyes open to the situation. Up until now, it took a while. But B'Tselem was more active in the last couple of years, largely in responding to NGO Monitor's reports. So there is some of this going on. But frankly, the European governments that provide most of their money, they're the ones also who have to set real moral guidelines. The European Instrument for Human Rights and Democracy, which provides a significant amount of money and other frameworks for these groups, claims to be supporting human rights, but also there, nothing for Gilad Shalit. So I think there needs to be a much stronger emphasis, and frankly that's what I've been spending a lot of the last few years doing, is to try to restore the moral basis to groups that claim to do human rights.
When you say that, do you have personal contact with them, and what is their reaction to you?
We occasionally are able to speak to some of the leaders of these groups. Frankly, in most cases they refuse to share a platform. Many times we have offered, other people have offered to set up meetings and public discussions with the head of B'Tselem or the head of the other organizations, and in most cases they refuse. This also, I think, tells you something about the unwillingness of these organizations to deal with the complex moral issues in a serious manner. They are promoting their ideology, they have hijacked the language of human rights and left the substance far behind.
Professor Gerald Steinberg, president of NGO Monitor, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.